I went right back into the same environment that I left. I went right back into the same self-hatred, the same self-sabotaging. But now I had this whole other war going on. I didn't know how to handle it. Hey there. Are you a Christian woman who's ready to strengthen your faith and stop the madness in your mind? The worry, doubt, anxiety. Do you want something more for your life but are not sure where to even begin? You've come to the right place. Hi, I'm Kristin Campbell. I'm excited that you're here as we journey together to discover mindset renewal and empowered faith for the Christian woman. Hi, everyone. So excited that you're joining me today as I share my backstory. I think it's important to let you know where I'm coming from and the journey I've been on, mostly because if God can transform my life, He can absolutely transform yours. He is not a respecter of persons. I do not have any special superpower. The Lord is faithful, and He's faithful to complete the good work that He's begun in all of us. And I want to share my backstory because I want you to see that it hasn't all been easy or clear or good along the way, yet God has been faithful to use everything that I've gone through and to really turn it around. He is faithful. So I want to just kind of get right into it. I wasn't born in a Christian household. My parents were Catholic, and I'm not coming against the Catholic religion in any way, shape, or form. I grew up in a Catholic household, and in that household, my interpretation of what, the Catholic Church was, it was a lot of rules and regulations for me. I really developed some skewed beliefs about who God was, about what I had to do to kind of earn His love. And everything that I took in from the Catholic Church, it never sat right with me. And I remember getting angry with the Lord at a very young age. I actually remember I was in middle school. So this was in the 80s. And it was a Catholic middle school, and we were going to the church, and we're walking up the steps, and a nun comes running out of the church and starts screaming at us to get down, get down, get down. And, I don't know if I was in 6th or 7th grade. I remember just hitting the ground and thinking what is going on? Are we under some kind of attack? What is happening? She was crying out that someone had stolen Jesus. It was so bizarre. Just even now thinking back, I was like, oh my goodness, someone stole Jesus. And what had happened was someone broke into the church and stole the Eucharist, the communion that they give. But this poor woman, I really did feel bad for her. She was so distraught. Someone stole Jesus. Someone stole Jesus. And I remember so clearly thinking, how can this Jesus help me if He can be stolen from this church? It didn't make sense to me. So just really early on, I had already developed just some really wrong ideas of who God was and really who I was. I never really felt good enough. I never felt worthy. I really developed such a low self-esteem at such an early age. And, I didn't have horrible parents. I didn't have a horrible childhood. It's just the way that I interpreted all of these things around me and the environment around me was in such a self-hatred. It was in such a depressing, anxious kind of way. I really never felt loved. And I was loved, but I didn't feel loved at the time. So, and we can all look back and say, oh, or hopefully we can look back at some point and say, okay, understand. But at the time, these are the core beliefs that I developed, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, that God could be stolen, that, he wasn't strong, that I couldn't do the right things. I couldn't earn his love. I was always going to be bad. So I just formed all of these wrong beliefs and thoughts. And because I formed all of these wrong beliefs and thoughts, I acted out according to them. And I acted out in ways that were not in my best interest. I was wounded, so I was walking around with these like emotional and mental wounds, and I was literally bleeding on everybody around me. I had a horrible time connecting with people. I was so fearful. And again, I had such a low self-esteem. I hated myself. And it's not that I didn't want people to like me. I so desperately wanted people to like me. But when they did, I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't like me. So then how could they like me? And I just went into this cycle of sabotaging relationships, whether it was friendships, whether it was romantic, family, just sabotaging them. And I didn't really understand it. I didn't know who I was. I didn't like who I was. I was filled with shame. I really felt like a failure all the time. I was constantly lying to try to create something that I would feel comfortable in. And it just never worked. And I always felt like a failure. Always. And there was a lot of evidence that said that I wasn't failing, but I just couldn't believe it in my heart. It just felt very unworthy. And this went on for years and years. And I remember coming home from college my freshman year. So I was about 17. And by this time, my mom did come to know the Lord. And they had this revival thing at the high school. And my mom's begging me, just come by before you go out. I was like, okay, fine, I'll come by. So I remember going, and I was with a group of my friends. I was, like I said, I was a freshman in college. So I had been in college for a few months. I was 17. I think now my son is 15. I'm like, there's no way I would send him to college at 17. So I had really gotten into some bad stuff while I'm starting in college, and just my self-hatred was at a whole new level. I couldn't even look in the mirror. Again, this wrong connect, I could not connect with people. Self-sabotaging was really strong. So here I am at this revival, and God is definitely moving in my heart. They do this altar call. I raise my hand. I go forward. My friends at the time, looking back, they were so supportive. They were just yeah, I think they knew I was so messed up. They were like, yeah, you do need this. Get up there, run. So, I did. I went up and, I said the prayer, and I went backstage, and they handed me an Amy Grant cassette tape. I'm so telling you my age right now. Then that was it. I went out with my friends, and then the next day I went back to college. And I really had no idea what to do. What was next? I went right back into the same environment that I left. I went right back into the same self-hatred, the same self-sabotaging. But now I had this whole other war going on. I didn't know how to handle it. So things didn't get better. They got worse. I experimented with more drugs. I started drinking more. I started having the wrong relationships with people. And it just got hard. It got really hard. The self-hatred, the feeling like I was a failure, the anxiety, the depression. So I was functioning. And so I thought, I'm okay because I'm functioning. I'm still passing. I was able to get an apartment. I was like kind of taking care of myself. So I figured I'm still okay, but really I wasn't. So, fast forward maybe 6 years or so, I happened to get an apartment literally like a half a mile or mile down the road from my mom's church, which now I know was not a coincidence. But at the time I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know where her church was. Like I was so like, I said that prayer, it didn't work. Nothing changed. Again, I went back to this God isn't like really, he's not that powerful because I said the prayer. Nothing changed. It got worse. I was done. So I didn't realize when I signed the lease on the apartment that it was so close to my mom's church. And she, again, was like, please, please, please just come to this night that they were having. And I went literally just to shut her up because I was like, oh my gosh, please, you have to stop harassing me about this. So I went with my boyfriend, guaranteed we were high or drunk. And we went again, my heart was literally breaking in the service. I am like trying not to show emotions. I am absolutely not saying any prayers that they tell me to pray. I'm absolutely not going forward because that didn't work for me last time. Man, God was just grabbing a hold of my heart and we left. And I didn't want to talk to my mom about it anymore. I was like, look, I did it. So we're done now. I did what you wanted me to do. We're done. But those next few months, the Lord was just breaking my heart. Just these little things where he would remind me of, I didn't know at the time, but of scriptures, of promises of who he was. Random people would call me up or, where I was working at the time, there's a lot of social work. So I would go out to networking events. I'd be going out to lunches and random people would start talking to me about Jesus. And I was like, okay, what is happening? And I remember one night I was just in such a dark place in my room, crying the deep cries that I used to cry all the time, where I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but you're crying so hard that there's no sound even coming out. And like you can literally, you don't even know where the bottom of that cry within your body is coming from. It's like you're crying out of this bottomless pit and there's just no sound. It's just this deep cry. It was in such a dark place, and I clearly could hear the Lord saying that I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice. Was I going to choose him or not? And I said, I will. I'll choose you. Didn't know what that meant. Didn't even know what I was signing up for. But I had such a peace that I can't explain come over me in that moment. I knew that this time it took. I think that's why I even remember saying like, oh, okay, this time I must have done it right. Because there was a definite shift in my heart for that moment. Now, this is typically the point in someone's testimony where they tell you how life changes and gets awesome and they never look back. That's not my testimony. I knew in that moment when that peace came over me and I knew there was a definite change within me somehow. I didn't really understand it at the time. Yet when I woke up, I still had no idea what to do, what happened, where to go. I started asking my mom. I started asking, I started going to her church. I think the first couple times I went to church, though, was like after clubbing. So I still kind of smelled like smoke, and I may have still had alcohol smell on me. I could have been hungover. Not really the way that I'm sure my mom wanted her daughter to come into church, but it is what it is. I didn't know how to live this new life because I still wanted to continue my old life, even though I didn't want to continue my old life. It was just very, very confusing. Very quickly, I decided like, okay, I have to get this right. And again, looking back now, I can see that was just because of my wrong understanding of who the Lord is. But I felt like, okay, now that I committed to you, now I have to do all of these certain things, and I have to become this perfect Christian, which at the time I thought existed and I thought was attainable. Now I realize there's no such thing, but I did this like full pendulum swing. I went from doing my own thing to this like super judgmental, like uber religious person. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a mess. It was a mess. And again, I didn't heal anything. I didn't change anything in my thoughts. I did not renew my mind. I did not heal my hurts in my heart. I still didn't love myself. I was still struggling with the lifestyle that I had come out of. But I just put this like Jesus mask in front of it. And man, that did not work. That just led to a lot of other false mindsets, false assumptions about who God was and who I needed to be or who I was. Still dealing with rejection, still dealing with feeling like I'm a failure, still being, anxious about everything. And yeah, I'm trying to hold up this Jesus freak facade, and it was a mess. And there was a very painful event that I won't go into now, but I will share in the future, a very painful event that happened within the church. And it forced me just to actually leave Connecticut. I was living in Connecticut at the time, and it forced me to leave Connecticut and just move to Florida. And I remember saying to God, like, I can't live like this. If this is Christianity, I can't do it. I can't live like this. Yet I know I don't want to live like I did before. I need this to work, but I need it to be different. I need to really know you because this can't be you. I moved to Florida. God just put the right people in my life. And through counseling, through mentors, through amazing Christian friends, I began to break down all of these false beliefs I had about the Lord and about myself. I started getting into His Word. I started really studying what the Lord was saying, who He was, where I fit into all of that. And I started healing. And that's where that mindset renewal for me, that's where that transformation for me really began. And that's really where I believe my walk with the Lord truly began, because I had to break it all down and then rebuild it on God's word and on His promises. And He was so faithful and so kind throughout it all. I wouldn't change any of those painful moments for anything, because what I came out of with, my love for the Lord and my understanding and the healing, is so, so precious to me. And I want to share that with you because you may be somewhere in your own life where I may have been in the past. And I want to encourage you to continue to really seek the Lord in His Word, not in religion, not in people's opinions, not in your own understanding, not even in this podcast. The Word is very clear that we are to test all things, to test what people are saying against the Word of God. I may not get it all right, but the Word has the answers. And so wherever you are in that journey, keep seeking the Lord. He is faithful. He will bring you through. He has worked so many of those messy situations, so many of my mistakes. He has worked them to good. Where I didn't think it was ever possible, He has. He has restored relationships that I never thought could be restored again. He has healed parts of me that I never thought could be healed. I never even wanted to admit that they were broken. And He healed me. So that is my backstory. And thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that you join me again next week. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope you walked away a little stronger in your faith and freer in your mind. You are so loved. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. Leave your ratings and reviews, and engage with me on social media. I'd love to hear from you.